The vast and dimly lit grand chamber of the Nexus Council station hovered in the cold expanse of space. This colossal metal ring, suspended among the stars, served as the meeting place for the most powerful factions across the galaxy. Within, representatives from over 200 species sat around a circular table, their discussions revolving around trade, diplomacy, and the never-ending bureaucratic disputes that were commonplace in this intergalactic gathering. Holographic projections flickered in the air, illustrating trade routes, diplomatic diagrams, and issues of cultural clashes. Councillor Verathon of the Meridian Empire, his ceremonial robes flowing with his every move, stood at the front, his gaze cold and calculating as he glanced over the assembly. However, his attention was fixed on a particular spot, a chair that had remained unoccupied for half a century. It was Earth's designated seat. For 50 years, humanity had not attended a single meeting. Once again, the humans have decided not to grace us with their presence. Verathon's voice was thick with sarcasm as he addressed the chamber. Several representatives, including the buzzing insectoid species from the Zenthri Dominion, chuckled at the remark. Ambassador Jara of the Liani Collective, a species known for their peaceful ways and striking blue skin, gently raised a hand to speak. Perhaps, we should be more understanding. Humanity is still adjusting to galactic norms, she suggested, her tone warm. Verathon's eyes narrowed, and the reptilian delegate from the Zephroni coalition, Croak, spoke up with a growl. Adjusting? It's been half a century since the first contact. Their ambassador appeared once, then vanished without a trace. This is no adjustment, it's cowardice. The chamber echoed with murmurs of agreement, and Verathon added, indeed, they attended once. Their representative Park was present, made polite excuses about needing time to reorganize internally, and never returned. Not a single appearance since, even after 247 sessions of this council. The air in the room grew thick with the weight of these unspoken truths. Earth, a once promising species, had become something of a joke. We should consider removing them from the registry, Verathon proposed dismissively. Let them remain in their isolated corner of space and cease pretending to be part of the galactic community. Ambassador Jara spoke again, her voice filled with an understanding that only someone familiar with humanity could convey. But their initial scans suggested that humanity had potential. Maybe they are facing challenges we do not yet comprehend. The only challenge they face is their own failure, Verathon retorted sharply. Before the matter could be voted on, War Master Dar of the Corac Dominion, a towering figure covered in battle-worn armor, stood and addressed the room in a deep rumble. Why are we still discussing this trivial matter? There are far more pressing concerns to address. The chamber quieted as Dar's powerful presence filled the room. 15 systems along the outer rim have requested protection. They have sent repeated pleas for aid. But nothing has been done. Verathon looked at Dar, dismissing him with a wave of his hand. We have discussed this at length. Military intervention is not something we can jump into lightly. These systems are not part of the Council's core, and they can defend themselves if they so wish. But they can't, Dar's voice thundered. They have no defense. The Corac Dominion is the only force prepared to act. Indeed, we have 50 survey ships, Verathon said, still trying to maintain control of the conversation. They have no weapons, no shields, and no means of defending themselves. If the Dominion attacks, they will fall. But that is not our problem. But something was about to happen, something that would change the fate of the galaxy and humanity's role within it. The debate in the council chamber continued without resolution, as discussions shifted to whether species from high-gravity worlds should be provided specialized accommodations. Meanwhile, Dar sat back, his reptilian eyes fixed on the table, clearly disinterested in the trivial matters that continued to dominate the conversation. The council had long lost its sense of urgency. Jara, the Liani ambassador, could feel the weight of the discussion on her shoulders. For decades, she had watched this council shift from a forum for mutual protection to a stagnant political system that lacked the will to act when necessary. The council was supposed to protect the weaker species of the galaxy, but increasingly, it seemed more like a collection of bureaucrats more interested in trade agreements than in ensuring anyone's safety. As the session dragged on, a small delegate from one of the outer rim systems, a shaky-mannered mammalian species, stood up. "Honored Council," the delegate pleaded, their voice quivering. "The Corac Dominion is gathering its forces near our borders. We have seen their warships, their fleets. We are powerless against them. We need help." Verathon responded with his typical dismissiveness. "We have discussed this. Protection should not be handed out like charity. Military intervention is not a decision we make lightly. You will have to wait." But the delegate's voice rose in desperation. "We do not have time to wait. The Dominion does not care about your debates. It will take us down before you can even decide whether to send a single ship. Please, we need action now." Dar's voice cut through the room, icy with certainty. "I told you, they should have sought our protection when they had the chance. Now, they must deal with the consequences of their own weakness." Jara's heart sank as she realized the Council was doing nothing to help. The Corac Dominion had become more aggressive, and this was only the beginning. If the Council failed to act, the galaxy would witness the rise of a militaristic empire that would impose its will on anyone who couldn't defend themselves. Humanity's seat at the table, which had remained empty for so long, seemed more distant than ever. "I move that we end the discussion and vote to remove the failing systems from the Council registry," Verathon proposed. The room fell silent as the Council members prepared to make their decision. It seemed like the most logical step. The systems along the rim had no one but themselves to blame for their lack of defense. But before the vote could be taken, the doors to the chamber slid open, and a young officer of the Liani Collective, Sujin Choi, stepped into the room, her face drawn with concern. She walked directly to Jara and whispered something in her ear. Jara's expression shifted. The Council was losing its grip on reality, consumed by politics while the galaxy teetered on the edge of collapse. Jara had hoped that the humans, though absent, would somehow provide assistance. But no one had expected Earth's isolation to become a permanent stance. However, a message from Earth was on its way, one that would change everything, and perhaps even give the Council the wake-up call it desperately needed. 3 months passed. The Corac Dominion's aggression continued to escalate. They had begun to conquer more systems, declaring them under their protection, a euphemism for occupation. Refugee ships from the Outer Rim systems arrived in droves, their stories painting a grim picture of overwhelming force and military might. The Corac had taken entire systems with minimal resistance, wiping out any opposition before it could mount a defense. As the Council met in emergency session, the tension in the room was palpable. Verathon looked around, his mind racing. It had been decades since the Council had seen any kind of unified military force. The Zephroni Coalition's fleet, once a powerful symbol of their unity, was now little more than a joke, unable to defend even the smallest of systems. The Meridian Empire had weakened over the centuries, with its remaining fleet being nothing more than a ceremonial symbol of a bygone era. The delegate from the Liani Collective, Jara, spoke up. "The Council must act. If we continue to debate, we risk losing everything." Her voice was steady, but beneath it, there was an undeniable urgency. "We cannot afford more debates," Sujin Choi added, her voice sharp. She was standing beside Jara, her usual calm demeanor replaced with raw frustration. "We have seen the reports. The Corac fleet has mobilized 800 warships. We are vastly outnumbered. It is time to take action or admit that the Council has failed." Verathon stood, his face flushed with anger. "What do you suggest, Sujin? Shall we simply throw our fleets against the Corac and hope for a miracle?" "It's not about miracles," Sujin replied. "It's about doing something before it's too late. But even now, there may be one more chance." The room grew silent as Sujin's words hung in the air. "I have received reports from Earth. I have connections there, human contacts who have been monitoring the situation. They are not idle. Humanity has been building something. A force capable of protecting its people and, perhaps, others too. If we are going to stand a chance against the Corac, we may have to ask them for help. The council members exchanged confused glances. Earth had not been present in any of the council's dealings for 50 years, and no one had considered the humans capable of contributing anything meaningful. We've ignored them long enough, Jara said softly. Perhaps it's time to ask for their aid. As the council struggled to grasp this possibility, an unexpected message from Earth would soon arrive, one that would forever change the way the galaxy viewed humanity's role among the stars. The decision was made quickly, if reluctantly. A message was sent, carried by a fast courier ship under the command of Lieutenant Sujin Choi, who had volunteered to make the journey herself. The council knew that Earth's involvement was a long shot. Humanity had been absent for half a century, after all. However, with the Corac Dominion marching through the galaxy unchecked, even the faintest glimmer of hope seemed worth pursuing. As the ship sped toward Earth, the council continued its debates. Every conversation seemed meaningless compared to the looming threat that was advancing through the outer rim. Dar's forces had already taken 5 systems, and rumors of more being conquered were spreading like wildfire. Despite the urgency, no military force from the council was ready to intervene in time. Admiral Varicose of the Meridian Empire, who had once commanded vast fleets in the past, was gravely concerned. His fleet had been reduced to a handful of aging ships, with many of them merely symbolic relics of a once great empire. The Corac had overpowered the council's defenses with ease, and even if they managed to assemble a defensive fleet, it would be inadequate to stop the Dominion's advance. Meanwhile, Sujin's courier ship, a small but fast vessel, made its way through the vastness of space. She had pushed her ship to the limit, traveling at maximum speed to reach Earth's borders. The message she carried was one of desperation, a request for assistance in the face of an unstoppable enemy. She had no idea what to expect from the humans, but she knew one thing for certain: they had been silent for too long, and the time for diplomacy had passed. When Sujin entered Earth's monitored space, her sensors were immediately overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the security infrastructure in place. Automated defense platforms, patrol routes, and sensor grids surrounded the entire system. This was not the peaceful, isolated humanity the Council had believed in for 50 years. What Sujin saw was a society preparing for something far more significant than just maintaining peaceful trade relations. A sleek human patrol craft appeared beside her ship, its weapons systems fully powered. A calm voice came through her comms. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself. State your purpose." Sujin transmitted her credentials immediately. "This is Lieutenant Sujin Choi of the Liani Collective. I carry an urgent message from the Galactic Council to Earth's leadership. I request permission to approach." There was a brief pause before the voice responded. "You are cleared to approach Lunar Command. Do not deviate from the designated flight path." As Sujin followed the patrol craft toward the moon, she was astonished by what she saw. Earth was not the primitive world the Council had dismissed. Lunar Command, the facility she was heading toward, was a massive fortress, extending deep into the moon's surface and into orbit. Docking bays, weapon platforms, and communication arrays filled her view. This was not the Earth she had once known during the early days of the cultural exchange program. Sujin's heart pounded in her chest as her ship docked at Lunar Command. The security team that met her was efficient but not hostile, scanning her thoroughly before escorting her through immaculate hallways. The scale of the operation was far beyond what she had imagined. The humans were not just hiding in their corner of the galaxy, they were preparing for something monumental. She was led to a conference room where a woman in her 60s, Admiral Kwan, waited. The Admiral's sharp eyes regarded Sujin with a mixture of curiosity and seriousness. "Lieutenant Choi," Admiral Kwan said, her voice calm but firm. "I understand you carry a message from the Galactic Council." Sujin nodded, her voice steady but urgent. "I bring news of the Corac Dominion's attacks on the Outer Rim. 5 systems have already fallen, and their fleet of 800 warships is advancing rapidly. The Council is powerless to stop them, and we are in desperate need of aid. Admiral Quan listened without interrupting, her expression neutral, but there was a subtle shift in her demeanor when the full weight of Sujin's message sank in. After a long silence, Quan spoke. "Tell me, Lieutenant. What does the Council believe Earth has been doing for the past 50 years? Sujin hesitated. "Most think we've been hiding. Some believe humanity is too primitive to participate meaningfully in galactic matters." Quan gave a knowing smile. That is exactly what we wanted them to believe. But what Sujin would learn next would shatter her perception of humanity, revealing a secret that had been building for 50 years, a secret that would change everything. Admiral Quan leaned forward, her fingers lightly tapping on the surface of the table as the lights of Earth shone brightly through the large windows. "You've heard the rumors, Lieutenant. The belief that we've been absent, inactive, or incapable. But what if I told you that everything you assumed about Earth was wrong?" Sujin, still reeling from the implications of the past few hours, could barely form a coherent thought. Earth had been preparing for something far beyond simple cultural exchanges or trade agreements. But what? The Admiral gestured to a command terminal beside her. A few keystrokes, and the room's projection system hummed to life. On the screen, Sujin saw a massive array of orbital shipyards, each one bustling with activity. Dozens of facilities constructed around Earth, Mars, and even the asteroid belt. "This," Quan said, her voice firm with pride, "is what we've been working on for the last 50 years. Sujin's eyes widened as the images changed. The asteroid belt was no longer a barren wasteland, it was a thriving industrial hub, complete with mining operations, refineries, and factories all linked together. Raw materials were being extracted and converted into steel, weapons, and ships. Earth had not been idle, it had been building an empire of its own, but one built for defense, not conquest. We didn't just build ships," Quan continued, as the projections flicked to the next image. "We've been building a fleet. A force capable of protecting not just Earth, but others too. We have 2,000 warships, all fully operational, each one bristling with the most advanced technology humanity can produce. Another 500 are in the final stages of construction." Sujin stared at the projections in disbelief. This is impossible," she whispered. "No," Quan replied calmly. "It took us 50 years, but it was necessary. The galaxy was too comfortable. The Council spent decades debating trade agreements while the rest of us prepared. We knew that sooner or later, someone would need to stop the Corac or another threat like them. And when that day came, Earth would be ready." Sujin shook her head. "But, why? Why not come to the Council sooner? Why stay away all this time?" Admiral Quan looked at her with a mixture of understanding and resolve. "Because we knew the truth, Lieutenant. The Council couldn't protect anyone, not with this level of complacency. When the time came, we had to be the ones to step in." Quan's gaze turned serious, her voice lowering. "And now the time has come." Sujin's journey was far from over, and soon, she would learn the full extent of humanity's plans. But what she saw next would make her question everything she thought she knew about Earth, and the galaxy itself. Admiral Quan stood, walking towards a large display screen that filled the room. Sujin followed, her mind still struggling to process the vastness of the information. This was not the Earth she had known. The small, isolated world that had kept to itself for 50 years had transformed into something entirely different. A force that could challenge the power of the entire galaxy. The screen switched to a detailed star map, pinpointing Earth's position within the galaxy. Quan's finger hovered over the map, zooming in on Earth's solar system. "Everything you see here," she said, "was built for one reason, defense. We have a fleet, yes, but more importantly, we have something the Council has lacked for decades, resolve." The projection shifted again, this time showing Earth's defense fleet in full scale. Massive ships, each one longer than the largest battleships the Council had ever seen, filled the screen. There were destroyers, cruisers, carriers, more than 2,000 warships, all of them modern, fully operational, and combat-ready. Sujin's breath caught as she saw the intricate designs of the ships, each one displaying a level of military precision and coordination that far outstripped the ragtag fleets the Council had cobbled together in desperation. These ships were built with one purpose, Quan continued, her voice soft but resolute, to protect the innocent, to defend against those who seek to take what is not theirs. Sujin could barely comprehend what she was seeing. This is impossible. You built all of this in 50 years. Quan nodded, her expression grave. We had no choice. The galaxy's peace was fragile, and the Council, despite its lofty ideals, failed to see the rising threats. The Corac Dominion, the Zephroni, the endless wars over resources, this was the future they were building. So we decided to build a future of our own. One where humanity would not just survive, but defend the weak when no one else would. As the projections changed once again, Sujin saw entire fleets of fighters, bombardment vessels, and auxiliary support ships being deployed in tight formation. And this, Quan gestured, is our final piece, the ability to mobilize quickly, strike hard, and do so without mercy if necessary. Sujin looked at the displays, unable to look away from the sheer power of Earth's preparations. But, why didn't you tell the Council? Why did you stay silent? Quan's eyes softened. Because, Lieutenant, Earth had a different idea of peace. We watched the Council debate endlessly, arguing over trade routes and cultural exchanges. But we saw a galaxy where true peace can only exist if those who want it are strong enough to defend it. So, for 50 years, we built. And we waited for the day when the Corac would show their true face. When that time came, we knew what we had to do. Sujin's mind raced. She thought about the Council, about how they had treated Earth, dismissed them as irrelevant, even mocked them. And now, humanity had prepared a fleet so powerful that the very concept of galactic peace might rest in their hands. But the real test was yet to come. Humanity's fleets were ready, but would they be able to reach the Council in time? And would their actions truly change the fate of the galaxy? Admiral Quan watched Sujin, whose eyes were still wide with disbelief. She could see the young officer's mind whirring with the enormity of the situation. It had taken Earth years to prepare for the worst, and now, with the Corac Dominion on the verge of conquering more systems, the time had come to act. You've seen the fleet, Lieutenant, Quan said, her voice measured. You've seen what we've built. But there's one thing we need you to understand, what we're about to do, we do not do for glory. We do it because it is the right thing. The Council has failed to protect the innocent for too long. If we do nothing, we risk the Corac's conquest becoming a reality across the galaxy. But we will not allow that. Sujin nodded, her mind finally settling into the reality of what humanity was about to undertake. So what now? Quan's expression was grim. We need to send a message to the Corac. A message that says we are no longer afraid. We'll hold the line, protect the Rim worlds, and make sure the Council knows we have been preparing for this day. But we can't do it alone. We need you to return to the Council and tell them that Earth is coming. Sujin swallowed hard, trying to keep her composure. She understood the magnitude of the task ahead. Earth had been absent from the Council for half a century, and now, they would enter the fray, not as a timid bystander, but as the galaxy's protector. There was no going back. I'll do it, she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. I'll tell them. The clock was ticking. As Sujin raced back to the Council, the full extent of Earth's preparation was about to be revealed, but would the Council accept humanity's intervention, or would their pride be their downfall? Sujin's journey back to the Council was fraught with urgency. Every minute that passed meant another system falling to the Corac Dominion. Her ship pushed the limits of its speed, and the strain was visible in the warning lights flashing on her control panel. Still, she pressed forward, knowing that the future of the galaxy depended on her reaching the Council in time. As she neared Nexus Station, the heart of the Council's operations, her mind raced with what she had seen. The enormous human fleet, the sprawling construction facilities scattered throughout the solar system, and the undeniable might of the Terran Defense Forces, it was all so much larger than anything the Council could ever hope to muster. She arrived at Nexus Station with a heavy heart, prepared to face the Council once more. This time, however, things would be different. The Council that had dismissed Earth, mocked its absence, would soon learn just how wrong they had been. Sujin was escorted into the Council's Grand Chamber, where Verathon, the Meridian Empire's counselor, waited. His cold eyes regarded her with skepticism, but Sujin knew better than to expect a warm reception. No, this was about survival. This was about showing the Council that the time for politics had passed. "I've returned from Earth," Sujin said, standing before the Council. Her voice was firm. "They've heard your pleas. Earth has been preparing for this moment for 50 years. And now, they are coming." As the Council absorbed this news, their reactions would be swift, some in disbelief, others in fear. Would they accept Earth's help, or would they try to handle the threat themselves? The chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices as Sujin's announcement sank in. Verathon's face twisted in disbelief, his mouth hanging open as he processed her words. Some council members gasped, others murmured among themselves, and a few, like the Zafroni delegate Corac, snorted in derision. But there was no denying the truth in Sujin's voice. Humanity had been silent for decades, and now, they were preparing to challenge one of the most dangerous forces the galaxy had ever seen. "What do you mean, Earth is coming?" Verathon demanded, his voice cold and commanding. "We've heard rumors, but this is absurd. The humans have been absent for half a century. You cannot expect us to just accept this claim without proof." Sujin stood tall, meeting his gaze without hesitation. "I have seen the fleet with my own eyes. It is real, Counselor. Earth has built a military force that can match the Corac Dominion, no, surpass it in many ways. They are coming, not for conquest, but to protect the galaxy from threats like the Corac. You expect us to believe that?" Corac sneered, his yellow eyes narrowing in derision. "The humans have been hiding in their corner of space for 50 years, and now they want us to trust them." Admiral Varicose, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward, his grizzled face set with determination. "If what you say is true, then Earth's arrival may be our only hope. But we need more than just words. We need a plan. We need ships. We need support." Sujin nodded. "Admiral Quan has provided the Council with coordinates for Earth's fleet, which is en route to the front lines. They will arrive in 7 days, ready to fight. But we must hold the line until then. Earth's fleet is coming, 2,000 warships, fully equipped and ready for battle. The Corac fleet will be outmatched. But only if we can last long enough." The room fell into a stunned silence. Jara, the Liani ambassador, looked at the projections with awe. 2,000 warships. That's more than the entire Council fleet combined. This changes everything. But how can we trust them? Corac pressed, his reptilian voice filled with suspicion. "Why would they help us after everything that's happened? After the way we've treated them?" Sujin's voice softened. "Because Earth understands something you have forgotten. Peace is only possible when someone is strong enough to defend it. Earth has spent 50 years building not just ships, but a military force designed to protect, not to conquer, but to defend those who cannot defend themselves." Verathon looked around the chamber, his face conflicted. The Council had long been comfortable, insulated by their debates and their trading deals. But now, they were faced with a harsh reality: they had failed to protect their own, and Earth was their last hope. As the Council struggled with their pride, the Corac Dominion advanced relentlessly. Earth's fleet was the galaxy's last line of defense, but would the Council be able to put aside its doubts and join forces before it was too late? The hours following Sujin's return to the Council were filled with urgency. The Council's leadership had quickly summoned a series of private meetings, each of them trying to figure out the best course of action. A few members, like Jara, supported the idea of Earth's involvement, but others, like Verathon, were not so easily swayed. We cannot just accept their help, Verathon argued in one of the private meetings. Humanity abandoned us for 50 years. And now, they expect us to rely on them. We've fought our own battles for centuries. This is not how we work. But Jara, always the peacemaker, was persistent. The Corac will crush us, Verathon. If we don't accept Earth's aid, we'll have nothing left to defend. We're outmatched, and you know it. The only way we stand a chance is if we stand together. Sujin, having overheard part of the conversation, stepped forward. Admiral Quan is already preparing her fleet for deployment. Earth is not just sending ships, they're sending a message. They've been watching us for 50 years, waiting for the right moment to act. This is it. We either accept their help or face annihilation. Verathon's eyes narrowed. You think the humans have our best interests at heart? I think they have the galaxy's best interests at heart, Sujin replied. They are not here for power or control. They are here because they understand what it means to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The Council has failed. Earth will not. The room fell silent, and for the first time, the Council members seemed to recognize the gravity of the situation. There was no more time for pride or politics. The Corac were coming, and they were unstoppable. After a tense moment, Verathon sighed. Very well. If Earth is truly coming to our aid, we will accept their help. But we must be prepared. We need to act quickly. The Corac will not wait for us to get our act together. Sujin nodded. The humans will hold the line for 7 days. We must use that time to prepare, coordinate, and make sure our defenses are in place. It won't be easy, but together, we can stop the Corac. The Council agreed to a temporary alliance, though their hearts were still heavy with doubt. Would humanity really save them? Or had Earth, too, become a player in a galaxy full of ambition and power struggles? As the meeting adjourned, Sujin left the chamber, her thoughts swirling. She had seen the fleet, and she had seen the resolve in Admiral Quan's eyes. Earth was ready to fight, but the real question remained. Would the Council be able to swallow their pride and work with Earth to save what was left of their galaxy? The clock was ticking. With Earth's fleet on its way, the Council had no choice but to prepare for the battle of a lifetime. But could they survive long enough to see it through? The Council worked furiously to prepare for the arrival of Earth's fleet. Ships were repaired, defensive positions were reinforced, and every available asset was put to use. The Council knew that they were still vastly outnumbered and outgunned. The Corac fleet, now fully mobilized, was closing in on the threshold system, one of the last remaining points of defense before they reached the core worlds of the Council. Admiral Veracos, who had long since accepted the fact that his fleet was far from sufficient, organized his forces with grim determination. His fleet, made up of outdated vessels and hastily converted civilian ships, would hold the line for as long as they could. On the flagship of the Council fleet, Veracos stood in front of a holographic display showing the approaching Corac armada. The numbers were staggering, over 800 warships, all bristling with weapons. Against them, the Council could only muster 284 ships. A drop in the ocean. We have to make this count, Veracos muttered under his breath, though no one in the room had the heart to disagree. The Council fleet had already suffered significant casualties from previous encounters with the Corac, and there was no reason to believe that this battle would be any different. But the Council had a chance now, 7 days of breathing room, thanks to Earth's intervention. Whether they could survive those 7 days was a question they could only answer through action. Sujin, now part of the Council's operations team, stood beside Admiral Veracos as the final preparations were made. She knew that Earth's fleet was on its way, but she also knew that the Council's fleet would have to hold out long enough for Earth to arrive. There could be no mistakes. The final pieces were falling into place, but time was running out. The Corac fleet was almost at the threshold system. Would humanity's help arrive in time to make a difference? The hours passed in a blur as the Council's defensive fleet moved into position around the threshold system. The crew members, though weary from the months of tension, were focused and determined. Every ship was prepared for what could be their last stand. The Corac fleet was only days away, and the stakes had never been higher. Admiral Veracruz stood on the bridge of his flagship, the pride of the fleet, staring out at the stars beyond the viewports. The battle ahead seemed inevitable. His fleet, a patchwork of old and outdated ships, was nowhere near a match for the Corac's formidable armada. Yet there was no choice but to fight. If they didn't, the Corac would steamroll the Council's core worlds, and no one would be left to defend them. The Corac fleet was moving with calculated precision, their ships as well trained and disciplined as their commanders. The Council's defenders had no illusions about the outcome. They would be outnumbered, outgunned, and possibly outclassed. But the Council fleet had something the Corac didn't: unity. They were fighting not just for survival, but for the future of every peaceful world in the galaxy. As the ships drifted into position, Veracruz turned to Sujin, who was standing beside him. She looked more composed than he expected, her determination a quiet strength. "You've seen Earth's fleet," he said, his voice low. "Do you think they can save us?" Sujin hesitated for a moment. "I don't think they're here to save us, Admiral. Earth's fleet isn't about charity. They've built it for protection, because no one else has. The humans will fight to defend us. They'll hold the line, but we have to buy them time." Veracruz nodded grimly. 7 days. That's what we have. And even then, we don't know what will happen. The Corac will hit us hard. We need to be ready for the worst. The tension was palpable. The final preparations were in place, but the galaxy was holding its breath. Could the Council fleet last long enough for Earth to arrive? Or was the galaxy about to witness its first great collapse? As the final hours ticked away before the Corac fleet's arrival, the mood among the Council fleet grew increasingly somber. The once strong ships of the Meridian Empire, now reduced to a shadow of their former glory, had taken their positions alongside the remaining forces of the Zephroni coalition, the Liani collective, and the other smaller species that made up the Galactic Council. They had no illusions that they would win, only that they would delay the inevitable for as long as possible. Sujin found herself in the command center of the Council flagship, surrounded by the crew. It was a strange mix of anticipation and resignation in the air. Officers moved quickly between stations, calibrating weapon systems and ensuring that their limited resources were ready for the inevitable onslaught. But there was little hope. The Council fleet was outclassed by the Corac's overwhelming firepower. Despite the overwhelming odds, Sujin couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had witnessed Earth's determination firsthand. She knew that the humans weren't waiting on the sidelines. Earth had been preparing for this very moment. While the Council debated trivial matters, humanity had focused on the one thing that truly mattered: defense. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime. Admiral Veracruz stepped into the command center, his face grim but resolute. "The Corac fleet has entered the system. They're on course for threshold. This is it. All ships, battle stations." Sujin took a deep breath. The moment had come. As the alarms blared, signaling the start of the battle, Sujin couldn't help but wonder if Earth would arrive in time. 7 days seemed so long, but it also seemed so short. She looked out at the stars, knowing that the next few hours could determine the fate of the galaxy. The battle was about to begin, but Earth's fleet was still hours away. The Corac were closing in, and the Council's forces were ready to make their final stand. Could they hold the line long enough for humanity to make its presence known? The Corac fleet arrived with a vengeance. Hundreds of warships appeared on the sensors, their hulking forms filling the space between the threshold system's two main planets. Each vessel was a terrifying display of advanced technology, bristling with weapons, armor, and the unwavering confidence of a predator on the hunt. Admiral Veracruz watched as the Corac ships positioned themselves in tight formations, calculating their every move. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to conquer. "Prepare for impact," Varicose ordered, his voice steady despite the fear swirling in his chest. "All ships, engage at maximum firepower. We hold the line. Do not retreat." The Council fleet, a patchwork of older ships, fired their first volley of missiles and energy beams at the approaching Corac ships. The first shots cut through space, lighting up the darkness as they sped toward their targets. For a brief moment, it seemed like the Council might stand a chance. Some of the Corac ships staggered under the barrage. But the moment of hope was brief. The Corac retaliated with overwhelming force. Their missile barrage shattered the Council's defense line, tearing through shields and armor with terrifying ease. The Council ships fought back valiantly, their crews doing their best to coordinate evasions, but they were no match for the Corac's sheer power. The first ship to fall was a Zafroni cruiser, hit by multiple warheads that overwhelmed its shields and ripped it apart in a brilliant explosion. A chorus of screams and alarms rang out across the fleet as more ships were torn asunder, one after another. The battle was brutal. The Council's ships had no time to regroup. They fought with desperation, each ship buying precious seconds for the others. But it wasn't enough. With every passing moment, the Corac pushed deeper into the system, tearing through the fleet like a hot knife through butter. But just as the Council fleet began to falter, a new signal appeared on the horizon. It was faint at first, but then it grew stronger. The sensors lit up with readings, massive ships, far larger than anything the Council had ever seen, emerging from faster-than-light travel. Earth's fleet had arrived. The Corac had launched their full assault, but now, Earth's fleet was here. Would the humans turn the tide? Or was it already too late to change the course of the battle? The moment Earth's fleet appeared in the threshold system, the tide of the battle began to shift. The Corac fleet, which had been advancing with ruthless efficiency, paused for just a moment long enough for the Council to breathe. Sujin stood at the command station, her eyes glued to the tactical display. The Corac, confident in their victory, had not expected this. Earth's warships, over 2,000 strong, moved with precision and coordination that left the Council fleet in awe. It was clear that humanity had not only built a massive fleet, but a highly disciplined one. Admiral Kwan's voice came through the communication system, calm and assured. "This is Admiral Kwan of the Terran Defense Fleet. We apologize for our tardiness to the Council meeting. We had some distance to travel." Sujin couldn't help but smile despite the tension. It was exactly the kind of statement she would have expected from Admiral Kwan, no boasting, no fanfare, just business. The Corac fleet, still recovering from the shock of the Earth's appearance, began to regroup. But it was too late. The human fleet wasted no time. Missiles, energy blasts, and railgun fire filled the vacuum of space, crashing into the Corac ships with incredible force. The human ships were like a well-oiled machine, working in perfect synchrony. Where the Council had struggled with coordination, Earth's fleet moved as one. The first Corac ship to fall was a massive destroyer, torn apart by a barrage of energy beams that disabled its systems and crippled its weapons. More followed quickly, each one disabled rather than destroyed, a testament to the humanity's desire to protect, not annihilate. The battle had shifted in humanity's favor, but the Corac were not going down without a fight. Would the human fleet's superior tactics be enough to stop them? Or was the real test only just beginning? As the human fleet entered the fray, the Corac fleet found itself suddenly on the back foot. The first volley from Earth's ships had struck with such precision that the Corac commanders were momentarily thrown into disarray. The human warships moved with terrifying coordination, their weapon systems working in perfect harmony. Every ship, from the massive carriers to the smaller support vessels, had its place in the intricate formation. For every Corac ship that was damaged, another took its place in the line, but the human fleet's relentless assault was wearing them down. Corac shields, which had previously withstood everything the Council fleet had thrown at them, were now faltering under the intensity of the human bombardment. Admiral Kwan's voice echoed across all frequencies. "This is Admiral Kwan. All ships, concentrate fire on their lead ships. Disable their command vessels. We need to cripple their coordination. The order was executed flawlessly. Human destroyers, which had been darting between larger ships like hummingbirds among giants, swarmed the Corac's lead ships. The Corac ships tried to regroup, but the humans had already gained the upper hand in terms of positioning and tactics. The Corac fleet, once sure of its victory, now found itself on the defensive. Varicose watched from his flagship with wide eyes, his heart pounding. It was unbelievable. He had seen military tactics, but nothing like this. The Council's fleet had been outmatched, but now Earth was showing them what true military might look like. Every strike was precise, and every maneuver was executed with the kind of unity the Council had never dreamed of. "It's happening, isn't it?" Jara said, her voice filled with awe. "Yes," Varicose replied, barely able to comprehend the shift. "Earth has done it. They've turned the tide." But the Corac weren't finished yet. The real test was still to come. Would humanity's relentless strategy be enough to force the Dominion into submission? Or was the galaxy about to witness an all-out war that would change the balance of power forever? Despite the growing desperation among the Corac fleet, War Master Dar had not yet ordered a retreat. His face, usually calm and composed, was now tight with frustration. His fleet, which had once seemed invincible, was now buckling under the pressure. The humans, whom he had dismissed for so long, were not only holding their own but were systematically dismantling his forces. But the Corac were not easily intimidated. They had conquered countless systems with brutal efficiency, and now that their dominance was being challenged, they would fight until the last ship was destroyed. Dar's orders rang out through his flagship, cold and deliberate. "Concentrate all fire on the human fleet. Leave no survivors. They will know that the Corac Dominion does not bow to anyone." The Corac fleet surged forward, all their remaining ships targeting the human carriers and command vessels. Their missile barrage was immense, a wave of destruction that sought to overwhelm the human defenses. But Earth's fleet was prepared. The human ships, already hardened in battle, held firm. Point defense systems flared to life, tearing through incoming missiles with deadly accuracy. The humans were using their smaller ships to create defensive webs, blocking incoming fire while their larger vessels focused on crippling the Corac's heavier ships. Admiral Kwan's voice came over the comms once again, this time with a different tone, a tone of finality. "This ends now. All ships, focus fire on the War Master's flagship. We will cut the head off the snake." As the human fleet pressed forward, it became clear that the Corac were losing control. The command ships, once the pride of the Dominion, were being picked off one by one. The dreadnought of Dominion, War Master Dar's flagship, was surrounded by human ships, every weapon trained on its vulnerable hull. "We're almost there," Admiral Varicose said quietly, watching the battle unfold from his flagship. "This is it. They're breaking." The battle was nearing its climax. With the Corac flagship on the verge of being destroyed, could the Council and Earth finally secure their victory? Or would Dar's last-ditch efforts bring about the destruction of the human fleet? The final moments of the battle unfolded with brutal efficiency. The human fleet had outlasted the Corac's aggressive assault, and now the Corac flagship, Dreadnought of Dominion, was on the verge of collapse. Its massive hull, once impenetrable, was now riddled with breaches. Explosions rocked the ship as human railgun fire tore through its defenses. The once mighty ship, pride of the Corac Dominion, was falling. War Master Dar's face appeared on all frequencies, his expression grim but resigned. "This is War Master Dar. The Corac Dominion has been defeated. I accept the terms of your surrender." Admiral Kwan stood at the helm of her flagship, her voice calm and authoritative. "War Master, I offer you one chance. Withdraw your forces. Remove your ships from the occupied systems. Return to your borders, and we will ensure that your people are treated with respect. But if you choose to resist, the destruction of your fleet will be absolute." Dar's eyes flickered with a hint of hesitation. For the first time, the War Master seemed uncertain. He knew he had no choice. His fleet was shattered, and the strength of Earth's military force was undeniable. He had underestimated humanity, and it had cost him. We accept, Dar finally said, his voice low, bitter with defeat. But mark this, Admiral Quan, the Corac Dominion will rise again. You may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. Perhaps, Admiral Quan replied, her tone resolute. But the galaxy will not fall to you today. We will defend it. With the Corac fleet in full retreat, the remaining ships of the Dominion slowly powered down their weapons. The battlefield, once a violent storm of explosions and chaos, slowly began to settle into uneasy silence. The human fleet had secured victory. Earth had not just come to the galaxy's defense, they had reshaped the balance of power itself. The Corac had been defeated, but what would the aftermath look like? Would the Council finally recognize humanity's place among the stars? In the aftermath of the battle, Earth's influence in the galaxy grew exponentially. The Corac Dominion, once a formidable threat, was now a broken force, left to retreat to their borders and lick their wounds. The Council, long dismissive of Earth's absence, now had no choice but to acknowledge their strength and resolve. Admiral Quan's fleet stood ready to assist the smaller species of the Council in rebuilding their defenses. Earth had not just proven their might, they had shown that they were a force for peace, willing to defend the galaxy from any who threatened it. The Council, once complacent and weak, began to change. Humanity's involvement had redefined the way the galaxy would function from now on. As the Council reconvened, Earth's seat was no longer empty. For the first time in half a century, humanity had arrived at the table, not as beggars or conquerors, but as equals. And the galaxy knew, without a doubt, that Earth would be there when needed most. We accept, Dar finally said, his voice low, bitter with defeat. But mark this, Admiral Quan, the Corac Dominion will rise again. You may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. Perhaps, Admiral Quan replied, her tone resolute. But the galaxy will not fall to you today. We will defend it. With the Corac fleet in full retreat, the remaining ships of the Dominion slowly powered down their weapons. The battlefield, once a violent storm of explosions and chaos, slowly began to settle into uneasy silence. The human fleet had secured victory. Earth had not just come to the galaxy's defense, they had reshaped the balance of power itself. The Corac had been defeated, but what would the aftermath look like? Would the Council finally recognize humanity's place among the stars? In the aftermath of the battle, Earth's influence in the galaxy grew exponentially. The Corac Dominion, once a formidable threat, was now a broken force, left to retreat to their borders and lick their wounds. The Council, long dismissive of Earth's absence, now had no choice but to acknowledge their strength and resolve. Admiral Quan's fleet stood ready to assist the smaller species of the Council in rebuilding their defenses. Earth had not just proven their might, they had shown that they were a force for peace, willing to defend the galaxy from any who threatened it. The Council, once complacent and weak, began to change. Humanity's involvement had redefined the way the galaxy would function from now on. As the Council reconvened, Earth's seat was no longer empty. For the first time in half a century, humanity had arrived at the table, not as beggars or conquerors, but as equals. And the galaxy knew, without a doubt, that Earth would be there when needed most.